In today's video, we will connect freedom and ethics using Jean Paul Sartre's Existentialism is a Humanism. Before we relate Sartre's discussion on ethics, allow me to give you an introduction on existentialism. Existentialism is a response to essentialism. If in essentialism, philosophers argue or advocate that essence precedes existence, existentialism challenges essentialism by saying that maybe we existed first before we define our essence or what we want to become. Man is confronted with the possibility of choice, and man becomes what he wills. He is in the process of becoming in which he decides to be who he is. Man is nothing else but that which he makes of himself. Therefore, man is responsible of himself and for who he is to become. Who he is and what he becomes is a constant choosing of who he wants to be. Example: a man isn't good not because of one good act, but because of the constant doing of good things. A man isn't a liar not because of one lie, but because he refuses to uphold the truth in his everyday dealings. And these choices and responsibility intersect with others. Our responsibility is thus much greater than we had supposed, for it concerns mankind as a whole. I am thus responsible for myself and for all men, and I am creating a certain image of man as I would have him to be. In fashioning myself, I fashion man. Therefore, my responsibility is not only a matter of forming my individuality, but includes a greater responsibility for all men. Let's use the case R versus Dudley and Stephens. So in this case, Dudley and Stephens were shipwrecked along with two other men. When the cabin boy, Richard Parker, fell into a coma, Dudley and Stephens decided to kill him for food. While we can say that the decision of Dudley and Stephens was out of necessity and that there are various factors that should be considered in deciding for their liability, the fact remains that they made a choice to kill Parker. Dudley might have pressured Stephens, or Stephens might have coerced Dudley, but at the end of the day, they both made a choice, and that choice was to kill in order to survive. As Sartre explains, regardless of the pressure, the coercion, or the voices around you, the choice still remains to be yours and yours alone. And it is in knowing that one is alone and responsible in making these choices that man feels despair. He is in anguish not only because of the necessity to make a choice, but also because that despair will not cease the necessity to choose and to act. Man is condemned to be free, condemned because he did not create himself, yet is nevertheless at liberty, and from that moment that he is thrown into this world, he is responsible for everything he does. No one can snatch him out of this despair, and his becoming is his alone. No one can be responsible for his actions but he himself, because despite the voices of those around him, the choice belongs to him, and he is liable for the consequences of these choices. I am obliged to choose my attitude to it, and in every respect I bear the responsibility of the choice, which, in committing myself, also commits the whole of humanity. There are interests at stake, and these interests involve not only your interest, but also that of a bigger society. We may be placed in similar circumstances, but the science, underlying meaning, and its interpretation is something that may be unique and subjective to every individual. We decide what happens, and how we take in everything that is presented to us is based on our own interpretations. Now, let's have another example by using the freedom of speech and expression. Freedom of speech and expression is a fundamental right protected by the state. Everyone has a right to hold opinions and share information. However, this right is one, not absolute, and thus can still be considered illegal, and two, not free from moral implications or relevance. While a person is entitled to his disrespectful and shameful remark against another person, such remark can be taken as libelous and also representative of his or her value or moral system. There is an abundance of freedom, and in this abundance we are compelled to make a choice. Now, this choice creates a precedence, and the repetition of this choice becomes a habit, and eventually, this habit shapes culture.